This is legitimately one of the best times of the year because we get to talk to Marc Topkin of the Tampa Bay Times for yet another Rays baseball season, and this one will be unlike any other because, as we know, Hurricane Milton tore through Tropicana Field. This team is displaced. They're going to be playing their games in Tampa, something that a lot of people look forward to at Steinbrenner Field off Dale Mabry across from Raymond James. And, so much is really up in the air with respect to the Rays' future in Tampa Bay, in St. Petersburg in particular. You've got, a lot of decisions that are going to have to be made about this team with Stuart Sternberg and coming around right about 3 days after the season opener. So we have a chance to talk to Marc Topkin of the Tampa Bay Times about all of that, and we'll continue our conversation on Friday about the ball club and what the Rays are expecting this year from guys like Junior Caminero and some of the free agents they have signed. So we'll get into all of that. But first, I want to make sure you guys have a chance to get on down to our friends at International Plaza at Breitling Boutique. If you haven't been there, what are you waiting for? All right, Breitling is one of the best Swiss watchmakers in the world. They've been in business for like 140 something years. They've been in International Plaza for going on 5+ years now. If you go into the mall, it's in the center of the mall. You go upstairs. It's a unique store, and they have tremendous watches for both men and women. Of course, the chronomats, the Navitimers that they're known for. And right now, they've been celebrating, even though the NFL season has just ended. They've been celebrating the NFL's 104th year anniversary with special team watches. All 32 teams represented. Limited number of those watches were available. Not sure how many from the Tampa Bay Bucks may still be around, but if you get in there, you may be fortunate enough to get one of those. Of course, all the teams are involved, and not just that, but they have great gifts, for your wife, your girlfriend. Valentine's Day, of course, is right upon us. Get in there. You can get a great sports watch for her. Very durable, gorgeous, lots of different colored wristbands and whatnot. It's just a great store. And you see a lot of people in there, man. They're used to dealing with celebrities, professional football players. You're going to see some Buccaneers if you come by there once in a while, Rays players too. Make sure you check it out. Breitling Boutique, International Plaza Mall. And when you go, please let them know that you heard about this on Sports Day, Tampa Bay, and they're going to take care of you. Breitling Boutique, International Plaza. There used to be just a couple days between the Super Bowl, or maybe a week or two between the Super Bowl and the start of spring training. Now it's like the next day. So that's great. We don't have any lag time. We're going to talk baseball with Marc Topkin of the Tampa Bay Times, who's back down in Port Charlotte at his luxurious Airbnb. And Marc, I know you've done this for so many years, but man, we got a lot to talk about. This is going to be a year that's going to be memorable one way or the other. And I I was reading your story the other day. I can remember sometime between 95 and 96 being at the Breakers Resort in Palm Beach and being one of those lobby possums, as we're wont to do, right, when you're covering owners' meetings. And Malcolm Glazer was tapping his watch, saying it was time, was running out on the city of Tampa to keep the Bucks to build a stadium. The guy in charge of the stadiums going up the NFL was Roger Goodell, who was not yet the commissioner. You were just at the Breakers about a week or so ago, and this time it was the Rays and Stuart Sternberg and Commissioner Fred Manfred and talking about their dire situation. So not much has changed in those terms. So let's start there. I was just thinking about March 31st and how significant that day will be when 3 days, that's just 3 days after the Rays season opener. You got a whole lot going on in a short period there, Marc.
Yeah, that's the short version.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah, I mean, essentially, you almost can look at it. There's like a 3 event, 4 day window or so. There is March 27th is the deadline or the day that the St. Pete City Council is targeted to vote on the Trop repairs, which
Mm-hmm.
understandably, one of the council members recently spoke out and said they want a full list of exactly what it is they're repairing, not just a carte blanche type of situation.
Right.
Obviously, the Rays have been on the record as saying they weren't sure that this would be done in the right, by the start of the 26th season or for the budget the city has appropriated. They've since agreed that they're going to try it. But so that's supposed to happen on March 27th. My guess is there'll be some contentiousness and some issues there. Nothing else has gone smoothly related to this team recently. Then March 28th. Oh, by the way, opening day, historic first game for the Rays ever in Tampa, playing in a minor league stadium, playing outdoors.
Right.
So many firsts to that. and pretty good chance the return of Shane McClanahan. Oh, by the way, who hadn't pitched since August of 2023. So yeah,
Mm.
there's that little base. There's actually like baseball stuff too.
Mm-hmm.
So that they play on the 28th, they play the 29th, they play the 30th against the Colorado Rockies, odd natural opponent, right? And then on the 31st, maybe the biggest deadline of them all, and if there's not a decision, made and shared publicly before then, that's the deadline for the Rays to comply with the terms of the agreement for the new stadium. If they don't, and there's some, I'm sure, legal phrasing to this, but essentially the deal blows up. I mean, if they don't, the city did their part, the county did their part by that deadline, and the Rays have to do their part by that deadline. So if they don't, that explodes the deal, essentially, the way it's been explained anyway, at the fault of the Rays. Now, they may argue that they were put into that position because of other actions, as they've said previously, but essentially that could be the end of the new stadium agreement that was celebrated, 6 whole months ago, and launched the whole here to stay
Here to stay.
festivities. And there's
Yeah.
still a lot of T-shirts around town that say here to stay, and that whole thing may blow up. So there is a lot to do with the future of this franchise coming up, essentially in that weekend right around the start of a historic season as well.
Yeah. No, it's an awful lot. And you had a chance to talk to Stuart Sternberg the other day, and we'll get into kind of what's going through his mind. But um, the thing about it is, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Mark. Wasn't it the Rays who said let's pump the brakes on repairing the trop right now? It's going to cost, I guess, an estimated $56 million, and then it was a letter saying you got to provide us with the major league stadium. Let's go, and the delay is going to cost us, the start, and maybe we won't be in the trop by 2026. Like there's so much starting and stopping, and who's at fault, and who said what and when. I don't want to get into all the particulars of that, but at the end of the day, uh, what Sternberg said to you the other day at the owners' meeting was, "I know whatever decision I'll make, I'll be able to look in the mirror and put my head down on the pillow, and I know I can live with myself with it." Decisions, and I can only think of really a couple, right? Maybe three. You take the deal as it exists now and go forward with St. Petersburg. I guess maybe there's a couple other options out there that we're not aware of. Um, or you pick the team up, go somewhere else, which is always a possibility when we've lived that scenario before, or you sell it. And, I don't know if he's contemplating one, two, all three, or something we're not aware of. I mean, is anybody really sure what it is that Stu wants to do with this ball club at this point?
I mean, I think the answer to your last question is no. I think we do hear that question a lot in covering this issue, just from various parties
Hmm.
involved. Is like, what do you think the Rays really want to do here?
Right.
But I do think to kind of pick through some of those scenarios you mentioned,
Right.
I think the commissioner, at least for now, and at least under the current commissioner, he's going to leave office, I think, at the end of the 28 season or during the 29 season.
Right.
He is saying, at least on the record, fairly strongly that he wants the team to stay in this area. The
Yes.
market should keep the team. Now, it's been pointed out to me, and I haven't had a chance to look this up yet. I keep stalling and hoping John Romano will do it, actually. Um, that he said very similar phrasings in Oakland and then eventually gave them permission to move. This has
Hmm.
been framed to me by some baseball people that this is not considered the same as Oakland, that Tampa Bay had a solution. There was literally a solution signed to and agreed to by all
They had an
parties,
agreement. That's correct.
where Oakland didn't have that, never got to that point. So I think, going back to what you said, I'm going to pick that apart a little bit. I don't think
Yeah.
option B of moving the team is viable now. Now, if this lingers for several more years, and if the trop gets fixed but is still kind of a mess and falls into disrepair and
Hmm.
suddenly starts having like rundown Oakland Coliseum vibes,
Hmm.
then maybe that changes. But I don't think moving the team is on the table now. Now, selling the team, there's a lot of rumors, and look, you run in highfalutin circles over there, buddy, and you hang out with some of the people around the beautiful people, and I think we've all heard different rumors. And I
Hmm.
actually joked with Stu the other day that I said something about rumors, and he goes, rumors? I mean, where are these coming from? I said, I don't know, but like, talking to a few people the other day, and I think we found 5 different groups that want to buy your team. And he's like, really? That's interesting, and also news to me. But there are,
Should we send him a list?
I mean, is there like a broker fee? Like,
I don't know.
is
We
there
could
a
get
cut to be
something for
had
this,
here?
right?
Like, yeah, if you bring the two broke, I mean, when you buy and sell a house, right? There's a buyer's fee and a seller's fee. What about like
I
a
know a guy.
middleman
I know
fee?
a
Hey,
guy, man.
yeah,
Yeah.
right. So he what he said to me, and in the article in the Tampa Bay Times last week, was that while he does talk to people and people do approach him, he is not actively engaged in talks or looking to sell the team. And I believe I'm paraphrasing, but I believe pretty closely his quote was like, if the team was for sale, people would know it.
Yeah. Well,
So if he's not looking to sell, and if they're not allowed to move, and if he decides not to do this deal, which he said he's losing sleep over, wrestling with this decision, you do wonder then what's the play here. I mean, I think another option that you mentioned is perhaps if there's some promises or some discussions or some hint of something changing, perhaps there could be an extension on the deal.
yeah.
Maybe the city and the county, if there were, this is hypothetical, if there were, if Stu Sternberg and the Rays people were having conversations and a sale was possible, and they had identified a group that wanted to buy the team and wanted to do this deal, I would think that could be part of, like, hey, can you get the city and county to? We're not going to be able to close on the deal for 60 days. Can we get an extension? And then if it happens, then you assume the new owners could then honor the deal. So I think there's some other scenarios here, but I think none of them are clear and none of them are necessarily linear and straightforward. But and I think you mentioned your flashback to the Breakers, and that was kind of the premise of my story the other day. Was on March 9th, I think it was March 9th or March 10th, but 1995, that's where the Rays franchise was born. And I kind of paralleled the construction of, the future never looked brighter then. And here the owner of the team was standing in the Breakers Hotel the other day,
Yeah.
and arguably the future of the franchise has never been cloudier.
Yeah.
So I do
It's
think there are significant questions and a number of paths where this could head. I mean, I think it could head to lawsuits, massive lawsuits. I think it could head to a sale. I think it could head to them staying. I think it could head to them not doing this deal. Look, if the Trop's getting fixed, I know one of the reasons people have kind of pushed back on saying it doesn't make sense to fix the Trop is it's only 2 or 3 years. Well, it's actually going to end up being more than that because they missed this season. The lease gets extended through the 28th season. If they don't get in at the start of next year, let's say they're delayed in a month or two into the season and they can't play there, there's some argument and some legal maneuvering that has to be figured out. Does that mean the lease extends yet another year? The lease is for 30 seasons, not 30 years, the original lease.
wow.
And the other side of that being, if the Rays opt to stay in their repaired Trop, and if they don't do the new stadium deal, and if whether it's Stu Sternberg or another group owning the team is still trying to figure something out here in the Tampa Bay area or anywhere. I mean, they're still trying to figure out a long-term home. I would think it's conceivable they would go to the city of St. Pete and say, can we extend on a year-to-year basis or for 3 more years because we don't have anywhere to go? And if you're the city, I would think whether you're mad at them or not, you'd probably want to do that because you would get more back for the investment that you made. And don't forget, Rick, and then I know back when you graduated from high school, they didn't even have TV back then, but like
That is
the
correct.
Trop is
Certainly
used
not cable anyway, Mark. I mean,
the
let's be
Trop
honest.
is used for more than baseball too. There's a whole bunch of Pinellas high schools. My kids went to Lakewood High in South St. Pete. Like all the St. Pete schools use the Trop for graduations.
Yep.
There's a bunch of other events done at the Trop. I mean,
Yep.
we could go back. We used to keep that list, I think, at the paper of all the events that were done in the Trop before there was ever a baseball game played. But there's some trade shows. There's a huge boat show usually held there. There's some community events that are held there. I think I just read something that the Skyway race isn't going to be held this year because they need the Trop to finish for the finish area and they can't use it. And so there's a lot of other things that could be kind of resuscitated if the Trop is fixed and held there as well over these next few years.
This has been discussed before, but just to for our listeners to put it kind of on the record a little bit, but part of the deal, if you will, was development rights, right, in that gas plant
Hmm.
area around the new stadium,
A big part of the deal.
which is huge, right, for the Rays, and not a small thing for the city of St. Petersburg. What happens to that if that's contingent on them actually agreeing and going all the way with the stadium? In other words, you couldn't then pull out of the stadium deal and somehow the Rays get the same rights to the development, could you?
My understanding of this, I'm gonna share credit or blame with Colleen Wright, who's done an incredibly good job for us at the Tampa Bay Times covering the city
Yeah,
and the county aspect of this, and John Romano as well. But our understanding is a few months ago, when the question was if the county was going to approve the bonds or not, that's where
yeah,
this scenario was raised, and it was explained that if the county didn't do the bond, so essentially the county defaulted, the Rays would then present their part of the deal, say they were in compliance. So then, since the county defaulted, that scenario would allow them to have the option to not do the stadium, but they would still get the development rights. Under the current scenario where we are, because the city and county have complied, and it would be the Rays who would be essentially defaulting again. I'm not sure if that's the right legal term, but by not complying or defaulting with the deal, that scenario is no longer in play. So there is not a scenario, from our understanding, where the
mhm,
Rays could say no to the stadium, but still have the opportunity to profit immensely from the land deal.
yeah. When Manfred talks about keeping the Rays in Tampa Bay, I don't know that that's exclusive to St. Petersburg. Clearly, that's the deal that's on the table and the one that they have to deal with now, and probably the most viable. But you always have, guys like Ken Hagan and others, seem to be wanting to, possibly, maybe, who knows, one day resurrect something in the Hillsborough side. There was a time when they had architects and they had drawings and they had possible land sites and all that. They couldn't get it done, and I still don't know of a big political movement over there for that. Is that even a viable option at this point, Mark, that you know about?
I don't know that I know anything about it or that we've heard anything concrete about it, like you just said. But look, I think it's a viable option if someone can put something together. And here's another scenario for you to throw this, as if this isn't the most convoluted, clustered. I didn't say what you thought I was going to say. They're clustered situation we've ever run across. Is the Rays don't do this stadium deal. It expires on March 31st. They play the season in Tampa.
Hmm.
That ignites some Tampa people who decide,
We like it over
and
here,
again,
yeah.
right, and again, I've lived in St. Pete for 40 some years. The bridge is this that the bridge is a barrier. Like
The Great
that's not a
Divide.
valid story. That's like, this is not. I mean, I don't even know what two cities like we could make a comparison to. In Minneapolis and St. Paul, it's the river. That doesn't seem to be a problem at all. Like,
Oakland,
I don't
San
get it.
Francisco. I don't know. Yeah.
And they built a really good thing called the subway system that goes under the bay, and it takes like 15 minutes for $3. It's amazing what mass transportation does. But
Oh yeah.
back to the point, like, look, I live in St. Pete. I go to a Lightning game or a concert at Emily Arena or a concert at Ray J. Or so. I mean, it works both ways. You can make it. But anyway, my point is, if they don't do the stadium deal in St. Pete, this season in Tampa just turns out to be great. They relatively speaking, they pack out Steinbrenner Field, 11,000 every game. I have heard, and we've reported this. The premium ticket sales have gone pretty well. The high end seats, it's only like 100 plus seats of like the new version of the Rays Club, but those were $29,000 a ticket. They sold all 104 of them. There's some $25,000 seats. There's some $20,000 seats that they sold out of or just about sold out of. So there's been some interesting response. So just hypothetically, that goes really well. Tampa people just love the fact that they don't have to drive over the bridge to get there. The Dale Mabry traffic and the weather and the heat aside. But does that ignite some interest over on the Tampa side? Does that get somebody who, like you said, maybe has a connection to somebody who has the land or has the site or has some interest or has a group, and can do something over on the Tampa side. So maybe that fuels something. I mean, that's just kind
Yeah.
of an idea that's been kicked around by some people that have mentioned it to me, and nobody of any official standing. But so I think your point is valid. I don't think that's dead either. I don't know who it is. I saw some really pretty pictures the other day of this gasworks development that they're doing, and there was one building I thought was a stadium, and I was like, whoa, and it was a food hall. It was just not to scale properly. But I don't think you can say that's off the table either. It just needs
Yeah.
somebody to do it.
Yeah. No, there's going to be a lot of time and conversations, obviously, moving forward. You had a chance, to talk to Kevin Cash and obviously Eric Deander and those guys the other day when they reported in Port Charlotte. Just going back, right? Like you live obviously, at Sunset Theater out there near the water in beautiful St. Petersburg beach area. But when this whole thing happened, when that hurricane came through, and we saw what we saw, right? The roof torn off, and just the kind of gut punch you felt. Even our building in the Tampa Bay Times was wrecked with a crane that fell through it. But that aside, um, I mean, what was the reaction to those guys? I mean, there's been a lot of memories in that building, and people ridicule it and all of that, but it stood for their entire franchise, and it's a vital part of the transition to a new ballpark. So, what was their perspective of that whole scenario?
I mean, look, I think everybody involved with the franchise, whatever their feelings about the Trop were up until the day before the hurricane hit. I mean, this sucked. This was a gut punch. This was a
Yeah,
an incredibly transformative
yeah,
issue that affected everyone in their organization. And
yeah,
you know, going forward, it'll never be the same. I mean, there were, thankfully, and most importantly, there were no lives lost in the Trop.
right,
But the damage, the missed time, just the amount of things that this impacted, like we talked about before. I mean, the events that can't be held there this year, the fact that the team's going to play in Tampa. I mean, what if they end up being really good this year and end up losing a couple of games because of like rain situation in Tampa, and they don't make one up and they finish a half game back, or they lose, have to play some 15 inning games or something. I mean, there's just so many weird things that could happen that you would then say were a direct, correlation from the whole
right.
Trop thing. But I just think, the payroll was cut pretty big. It actually rebounded with the signing of Hassan Kim to where it was kind of back up into a closer to their normal range. But it was hard not to think that was a direct result of the revenue loss that they sustained by not playing at the Trop. And I know, just for your vast worldwide audience here on this too, is like people get on the Trop and the attendance and all the time, and oh, there won't be any difference playing in a minor league stadium, they'll draw better, et cetera, et cetera. Look, they averaged 16,000 last year at the Trop, and they've had, obviously, constantly been well over that 11,000 number. So this is a revenue loss, and obviously they're charging more for tickets, and it takes people who know math better than me to we can eventually figure out if they made or lost money. But you have less people, so you have less parking, you have less food, you have less drinks being bought, all of that. So yeah, there's going to be a significant trickle down. Plus, I think they're paying we $10 million. I think we've reported to the Yankees, and there's like another 5 million in associated costs of some construction stuff and things like that. So yeah, this is costing them a lot of money. That's going to have a impact on the franchise going forward as well. And whether they're filling all their open positions right now, we've heard mixed stories about that. So yeah, there's definitely an impact on this franchise because of that. And I think they all thought it was sad. Cash said he was at his in-laws' house in Gainesville, and he was actually telling the story the other day. He saw it on the news clip or on his phone and thought somebody just AI'd it. And then when he saw more, and then the local news stations obviously had some incredible video. I was ironically also in Gainesville at a hotel, and remember thinking the same thing, like, this is real. Oh my God, this is real. And then phone just started beeping like crazy. And the guys that went in there, a couple of players went in, were able to go in and get their stuff. And Pete Fairbanks said it was, just, he said, pick like the weirdest movie scene you could think of. That's what it was like. I mean, just that's when the roof was still hanging from the rafters. They've obviously since cleaned all that up and done some work there. And the players were actually able to get back in and use some of the underneath facilities, the pitching mounds and the batting cages leading up to spring training and the
It,
clubhouse, but not back on the field.
it's become essentially the visual symbol of Hurricane Milton. I mean, that's what you see
No
among the
doubt.
other devastation. But that's the first image I think that people remember. All right, I'm going to go deep conspiracy on you here just a little bit. But if I'm the Rays owners and I'm Stuart Sternberg and I don't know what the new insurance policy and who's paying for it on the new stadium, but I assume they would take a bigger part of that this time. And I've just seen a hurricane essentially in the same place. This was a Cat 4. These things aren't getting smaller, Mark. And I'm going to build a new stadium essentially on the same property or just across the street from it, if you will. Do I feel confident that this is a good place for a ballpark? If who's to say that there's not one next year, 3 years from now, 5 years from now?
And a stadium with a lot more glass.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
I mean,
Good
a
point.
huge part of that new stadium design was both some non-movable glass just to allow, see
Mm-hmm.
in, see out, but also some movable glass to allow there to be a breeze, to allow there to be,
Mm-hmm.
some feelings in good weather, some weather vibes or whatever. So, yeah, no, I don't think that's a conspiracy theory. I think, if and when, this decision is reached, it would not surprise me at all if in explaining their decision that point is made. I mean, it's probably got to be made gingerly, but now because if you make it as a money thing, that it looks one way, but if you make it as a just the logic and a public safety thing, um, or if nothing else, do they have to go back to the architects and say, hey, if this was built, if we were building the new one, the Cat 4 standard, we might have to make it to Cat 5
Cat
standard. Or if we're
5,
building it to
yeah.
Cat 5 standard, we might have to go to whatever, the next level is. We may
Mm-hmm.
have to really figure this out. But no, I don't think that's a conspiracy theory. I think that's definitely a fair question. Now, is that the reason they're not doing the deal itself? I don't know that I would go that far, because I would think the redesign
Yeah.
options would allow you to figure something out like that. But no, I think that's a fair question. And look, nobody thought the Trop roof was going to blow off. Certainly not the the city of St. Pete person who decided it was a great year to reduce their insurance coverage by a significant amount,
Mm-hmm.
because there'd been no damage in the first 20 something years of play. But it never happened before, and then two hurricanes hit within 2 weeks, and the second one ends up taking the roof with it.
Yeah, and I'm guessing that the city won't be the ones insuring this new building.
I
It'll
think
probably
under I believe you're correct. I think under the terms of the new agreement, the onus for the insurance did shift to the Rays, as well as like all of the, not just the cost overruns, but I think all the maintenance costs as well.
yeah, and they've agreed to take on that, so that's a bigger expense. All right, let's go on to the field. And Mark, no matter what happens with the stadium in the future, the fact is they're going to play in Tampa, something that many people have wanted for years and years, maybe even some players, I don't know. And we're going to have outdoor baseball in Florida in the summer. uh, you and I know that means a lot of different things, in particularly rain and stuff like that. And we can talk about the challenges. Obviously, they're going to have some front loaded schedule with home games, which means they're very backloaded with a lot of road games and brutal stretches there. But I got to be honest with you, Mark, and you'll have a better feel for this as you continue your job down there in Port Charlotte. I think this is going to be galvanizing for this team. I think that no matter what you thought of the Trop, I was very comfortable there. But the fact is, it's artificial surface, which is not great for players and their knees and their longevity. Baseball, I think, was really made to be played outdoors. I played it here for years and years. Nobody cared if we got into a 5-hour rain delay, but that is what it is. But this is something new, something exciting. 11,000, not maybe 20 or 18 or 17. But you know what? They might sell it out every single day. Um, I don't know. There's a part of me that thinks that this might be an energizing, refreshed sort of season for the Rays because of their circumstance.
I'm going to say that I will agree with you for April and May.
Okay, fair enough.
I'm going to withhold
The
judgment
dog days are coming, man.
on June, July, and August, only because I'm going to, I think, but in all seriousness, yes, I think a full stadium and the vibe and the energy of a full stadium, a smaller full stadium. Now, it won't be louder because obviously there's no roof to keep the sound in, but it will present, I think, as a more vibrant,
The aesthetics will be perfect.
energized
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
atmosphere.
Yes.
And there's some standing room, and I know they're still finalizing some of this, but there's some standing room and some pavilion type seating like out behind the outfield, so it won't feel like a major league stadium, but there'll be fans all the way around. And if there's some ways to pump the crowd up, which I think because the Rays will be running the in-game entertainment stuff. So yeah, I think it will be an atmosphere, and Cash kind of referenced that the other day. And was obviously trying to tread carefully to not reflect on the trop or sound like they're taking advantage of the situation. But yeah, he's been on the record as saying that they are expecting the players to galvanize about this, like, hey, we can do this. Everybody thinks it's going to be horrible. We're going to make it work. But also that there'll be the energy that the fans provide, and there'll be a little, that'll help and rub off on the players as well. But I do think the question's going to be, when we get to those hot days and there's some day games that they're required, just have to play. I mean, you have to play on Sunday during the day, and
Sure.
there's some getaway day games where you just have to give the visiting team, you're required to play a day game on those getaway days. So some of those summer midweek day games, and with some lesser attractive opponents,
Mm-hmm.
even if the stadium is sold out per se, like how many people are going to be there and come at 1 o'clock on a Wednesday,
Right.
kind of thing in the middle of the heat. And or if it's one of those days where it just rains, as we've had, where it just rains all day. It's not just that 4:30 shower blowing through for an hour, but it's just
Right.
torrential downpour all day. There was a carrot. If you went to the Trop and you navigated getting into your car, parking, trudging through the parking lot, at least you knew once you got inside, you were going to have a nice
They were going
dry
to play. That's
a
right.
dry
Yeah.
haven. You're going to have a dry haven and be able to see a game and sit there for 3 hours and be comfortable.
Yep.
And it's not as fun when you are doing all that to get into the stadium and you're also sitting in the rain. So we'll see how it ultimately works out. But I agree with you. April and May, I think, will be very exciting, and they have a ton of home games.
Yeah. And listen, you mentioned the money that the Yankees will get off of this. I still think that the Yankees were very generous in some ways. This is an AL East team, essentially inviting them into their spring training home. Um, a lot of the players live here and all of that, but hey, that they helped them out, right? I mean, I guess the other options were other spring training homes like in Clearwater and such, but this seems to be, at least from an emergency temporary place, this seems to be the best option.
I think without a doubt, I've since learned a little bit more. I wasn't aware of this, what's actually a very stark difference between the Yankee facility and the Phillies facility at the moment. Now the Phillies have some plans to do some improvements,
Right.
but now there's a stark difference. I mean, I'm actually going to be there's a tour this week that the Yankees are providing, like a behind the scenes
Oh,
look,
cool.
kind of before
Yeah.
they're kind of moved in for spring training, but not fully yet. And before obviously once the Rays start their transition at the end of spring, it's going to be really hectic. But they're providing a tour this week, and I'll be very interested to see, because I've heard some informal feedback that what they have there on that Steinbrenner Field property now is as good as any Major League Baseball clubhouse, regular or spring training.
Oh, wow.
And obviously Yankee Stadium is always considered one of the best. So yeah, that facilities, there will be, and then Cash kind of mentioned that too, and again, kind of straddle a bunch of things, but he said he thinks once the players get in there, they won't be feeling like, oh, we're in a minor league park. They're going to feel like it's very much a major league setting, with all of the stuff underneath, the size of the space, the facilities, the technology. There's like a rehab room, a recovery room. There's all kinds of medical type stuff. So I do think it's going to be really good for them in that regard, and kind of make the most of it. But yeah, I think Steve Sternberg and Matt Silverman have been explicit. I've heard them say it several times. But yeah, they couldn't thank Hal Steinbrenner more, and he did the Rays a huge favor. And I thought his quote, the day that agreement was announced, was really interesting, because he said, this is beyond a rivalry on the field. This is, we needed to do this, and for the Rays, and he pointed out, he lives in Tampa, and he said the Rays fans are my friends, my neighbors,
Yeah.
people that I know. I mean, we needed to do this, and that was a very a very proper and appropriate and above and beyond type of response. Because yeah, they could have said, sorry, we can't do that, and we're not going to help you, and you've beaten us in a bunch of years, and finished ahead of us, and we're not going to do anything to help you. And they're doing it at some sacrifice of their own. I mean, it won't impact their spring training per se, but their minor league team's going to have to play on an adjacent field, basically not with stadium seating, with like some just bleacher seating. They use that team. They send a lot of their major league players down there to rehab. If
Right.
just pick a player. If Aaron Judge
Mm-hmm.
got hurt and he needed to go on the IL, he would come to Tampa and do all of his workouts there. And you know, they can still do that, but they can't use the major league clubhouse. I mean, they would have to use the facility, the minor league facility on the other side of Himes, and do all the work there. So they've kind of, the Rays get free reign once they take over after the end of spring training. It's their facility till the end of the season. So, and obviously the novelty, and this will be it'll be a great day to read the New York tabloids, will be when the Yankees come in April for a 4-game series and have to be on the visiting
The
side.
visiting clubhouse, yeah. That's the other thing is that it obviously they got the little facades that kind of replicate Yankee Stadium, if you will. You can obviously tell when you go by there and have for years that it's the Yankees' spring training home. Will there be a changeover? Will there be a makeover to make it feel at least aesthetically like the Rays' home?
Quite a bit, actually, and they have the opportunity, and I think they'll take advantage of it. Like, down like on the stands that go behind first and third base, there's those
Yeah,
signs that spell out Yankees. Those will be covered up or switched over, and
yeah,
I think they put out, the Yankees PR staff did a really good job kind of laying out for us all the kind of do's and don'ts. And I think this is only a little bit of a generalization. They can change anything they want in the stadium. The team store will totally be rebranded to be a Rays team store. There's only one thing they are explicitly not allowed to touch, and pretty appropriately so, is the statue of George Steinbrenner that's outside the stadium.
yeah. Well, yeah.
But
It-
there is that little Yankees kind of Hall of Fame tribute outside the stadium, and I don't know. I mean, I haven't heard what they're going to do. My gut feeling on that is it seems like you probably leave that. I mean, that's
sure.
that's Yogi Berra and that whole group of players, and Whitey Ford and Babe Ruth and DiMaggio and all that, and
Right.
that's some pretty cool baseball history. But yeah, I think the other thing somebody told me is just like the literally the metal work that was involved in putting the stadium seats at the end of each row. There's a Yankee logo kind of built into the framing of the seats. So I'm guessing they probably won't be redoing all of those. But yeah, I think for the most part, when you drive by, and certainly when you go to a game there, you are going to see Rays signage and not Yankee signage.
Yeah. Well, people know where they're at, but yeah, it'll still be nice of them to kind of retrofit it
And it'll
to
still
the
be called Steinbrenner Field. That's important to note. And in
yes.
fact, I had a story the other day. The Rays have kind of among their promo giveaways, they have a bobblehead series, and they're calling it the Steinbrenner Field Bobble Series. And the three players, the base for the three players are the three letters GMS for George M. Steinbrenner.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah. So I mean, look, it's a great gesture and something I think makes sense. Great catching up with Marc. We'll have part 2 of our conversation with him and get into a little bit of baseball talk and what the Rays are looking like on the field this year. Of course, we got Valentine's Day. Hope you guys are prepared for that. I am not. Make sure you go to Breitling Boutique. However, they'll hook you up for your wife, your girlfriend, your husband. Certainly, if you like one of those NFL watches commemorating the 104th year anniversary, get in there, Breitling Boutique. Make sure you let them know about it, that you heard about it on Sports Day Tampa Bay. Also, send in some mailbag questions. We'll have some time for a few of those, I think, on Friday. You can do that on Twitter or X at Sports Day TB. You can reach me at NFL Stroud, or my email address is rstroud@tampabay.com. For Steve Versnick, I'm Rick Stroud of the Tampa Bay Times. Have a great day, everybody.